Hi, I'm Veronica Monet. This is the Shame Free Zone. And with me today, I have a very dear friend, Dr. Betty Martin. Betty, welcome to the Shame Free Zone.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Oh my God, we haven't talked for so long.
Yeah.
And yet you are on my feed constantly, and your work is everywhere. I really want to dive into the wheel of consent. I want to talk about your book, and I want to give hopefully our viewers a few takeaways on how they might be able to apply this right now, today, whether they're dating or
Great.
married or
Yeah.
living together, whatever, or not. Because really, consent issues pertain to how we touch ourselves too, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But first, I'd really like the viewers to get to know the woman that I have known all these years and really love and admire. So I'm going to read just a little bit from your bio. And so Betty developed the wheel of consent. And she's had her hands on people professionally for over 40 years. First as a chiropractor, then as a certified surrogate partner, a sacred intimate, and a somatic sex educator. Wow, that's a lot of experience. Betty Martin is a consent educator, an intimacy consultant, and a former sex worker. I just really want to call out, thank you for being one of the rares. Oftentimes I feel like I'm the only former sex worker who's doing something else and calls it out.
Love hearing you say that.
Right? I mean, you and I know there's a lot of former sex workers doing some really awesome stuff out there,
Yes,
but they
absolutely.
don't usually call it out. Yeah. So thank you for being my sister in that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, really, who better to teach us about the nuances of consent and boundaries than a former sex worker who spent decades on the front lines of pleasure and all its complications? Absolutely. This is where, you just can't read books about this stuff. You really got to take it for a test drive, or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, Dr. Betty Martins, I'm going to keep saying that just for people that are tuning in late here. Her explorations in somatic-based therapy and practices informed her creation of the framework, The Wheel of Consent. And now her long-awaited book, and I know we've all been waiting for this. I can't tell you how many times I've gone over to your website, Betty, looking for material for my clients. And I'm like, okay, this is aimed towards us professionals. I don't think they're going to understand it. But now you have a book, and it's called The Art of Receiving and Giving, The Wheel of Consent. And it's based on your work of over 30 years. And over the last couple of years, you've been graciously assisted by Robin Dazen, is that how you say it?
Dawson.
Dalton, sorry.
Yeah.
And she helped you get the book to become a reality.
Over the finish line. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, I'm sure people would like to know what the Wheel of Consent is. Do you want to kind of give us a sketch
Sure.
of that?
Let me see if I can give it to you in a nutshell.
Okay.
If I have my hands on you, say my hand is going down your back, is it the way you want it, or is it the way I want it? And there's a big difference, and the difference matters.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you have your hands on me, is it the way I want it, or is it the way you want it? And both of those, the way I want it and the way you want it, are valid and important and worth exploring. It's just that they're different, and it's important to know the difference. So a lot of times when people talk about consent, they talk about it as if it means permission. It's okay for us to do this thing. It's okay for me to do this thing to you. But I think of it more as an agreement. Like, what do we want to do together? What interests you? What interests me? Can I put my hand there? Will you put your hand here? And it includes the question of who it's for. So the wheel of consent just sort of draws a line of who's doing and who it's for, and you come out with 4 quadrants. I'm doing what I want, or I'm doing what you want, or you're doing what you want, or you're doing what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's 4 quadrants to the wheel of consent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the nutshell.
So I think, okay, that makes geometric sense.
Yeah.
But how would anybody apply that to their actual, let's say, love life? Let's pick something like somebody's in a relationship. I'm thinking about, I have lots of female clients in particular who are, I'm going to use the word enduring, but they're allowing touch from their partner that they don't like because they don't want to hurt his feelings, or usually it's that they're afraid of endangering the connection in some way.
Yeah, I've been there. I imagine we've probably all been there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Especially
think,
when we're younger, right?
Yeah, not so much anymore. I don't put up with it.
I don't do it at all now.
But the model, recognizing that there is such a thing as being touched for somebody else's benefit instead of your own, can help you make sense of, oh, this is what's been happening. I've been touched, but it's really not been for me. So it can help to kind of make sense of that. And it also helps to make sense of the difference between what you want and what you're willing to give or do or go along with. And that's an important distinction.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, if it's something that I want, it's something that I'm choosing for me. It may or may not involve anybody else. It's, I want to walk in the woods. I want a cup of tea. I want a nap. I want a sandwich. I want to put my hand up your shirt. If it does involve somebody else, then of course you need to communicate about it. But just wanting doesn't necessarily involve anybody else. But it's something that I'm going to choose because I want it. There are some things, though, that I might not choose for my own desire, but I'm quite happy to do them because somebody else wants it. So I'm willing to, I wouldn't otherwise get up and go get a cup of tea, but I'm perfectly willing to get you one. Or, I wouldn't necessarily scratch your back in this way, but I'm willing to do it if that's what you want. And so noticing that there's a difference gives us permission to have some of each of those in our lives, because we want some of each of those in our lives. We want times when we put ourselves first and receive a gift that somebody else is giving us. And we have other times when we put aside what our preferences and go with what somebody else wants. And we need both of those. The trouble is, for so many people, we spend all of our time in the willing, and we forget that there's an option to have something that we want.
So you're talking about balancing being willing or available along with being more volitional, where you have your own desires.
Yeah.
What if somebody has difficulty contacting how they feel and what they want? What if that's kind of nebulous to them?
I think we all do at times. There's, of course, there's times when we don't know what we want. That's just part of being human. So don't beat yourself up for that. The 3-minute the wheel of consent came from a process called a 3-minute game, where you take turns asking each other what you want.
Which, by the way, I have passed on to many of my clients.
Yes, it's very fun. It's very fun.
I have married couple clients now who the 3-minute game is a mainstay of their marriage.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you're taking turns asking each other what you want. What do you want to do to me, and what do you want me to do to you? Or how do you want to touch me? How do you want me to touch you? And I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, let me ask
Oh,
you a question
because
about that.
how what to do if you don't know what you want? Well,
Right.
I started playing that game with people, mostly with my clients, and they would say, "Well, I don't know what I want." Well, that's not a problem. Why is that a problem? It's only a problem if I'm in a hurry to get going. If I'm perfectly fine with what is, then there's no problem. We just wait a while and eventually it'll bubble up. And it can feel like forever. It only takes, a few seconds, 30 seconds or something. It can feel like forever because it's awkward.
Yeah.
But when you have this practice of asking each other what you want and then just wait, and it'll bubble up. It will. It just takes a little time. And mostly it's because we don't slow down enough. We think, oh, I'm supposed to be doing something, I'm supposed to know what I want. I'm supposed to want this thing, or just slow the fuck down. And
Yeah. So, and I think that's a really important point that you're bringing up. I know that with some of the couples that I work with, slowing down feels almost painful for them.
yeah,
Like one of the ways that they approach sex is like it's actually kind of something they are getting through. And I don't mean they're
yeah,
tolerating it. I
yeah,
mean more like they're kind of falling into this place of being only half aware.
yeah,
And
yeah,
slowing down, you're kind of talking about turning consent into almost a meditation practice in some
yeah,
ways,
yeah,
or a conscious exercise in consciousness and being
yeah.
more present. Yeah. And so, what would you recommend for people who find it scary or awkward or painful to slow down?
Oh gosh, have compassion for yourself,
Yeah.
because of course it's hard. Like, it's not you, you're not broken. It's just hard to slow down because when we slow down, we feel more of our fear.
Mm.
And when we feel our fear, it's just not fun ever. So yeah, I think mostly we have to be willing to experiment a little, dip our toe in. Can I slow down for 20 seconds? Can I slow down for a little longer? Can I slow down for a little longer? And also, I want to acknowledge that not every relationship has room for you to have feelings. You may have a partner who is able to be there with you with what you feel and without trying to fix anything and just be with you,
Right.
or you may not. It may be a partner who can't handle feelings or doesn't want them or thinks they're a bother, or yells at you for taking as much time as you want. And I don't really have a solution for that. Um, just to acknowledge that it, it it's easier in some relationships than others. Um,
Yes.
mhm.
And I've also encountered um, some people when they're working the 3-minute game feeling kind of insecure or upset that their partner is taking so long to figure out what kind of touch they want,
Yeah,
like kind of seeing it as a personal affront,
yeah,
like, oh well, you must not be all that attracted to me if you
yeah.
got to think about it.
Oh,
What would
just
you suggest to somebody who has that kind of internal sabotaging dialogue?
get over yourself. Because it's not all about you. You know, every person has moments when they don't know what they want, and including you. I mean, we all have it. And the when we make space and create time for someone to notice what they want, that is a huge gift. It's just a huge gift. And yeah, it's as much a gift as the back rub or whatever that you're going to end up giving them. Is giving them plenty of time. And Yeah, and you'll be glad you did, because then you'll find out what they actually want. Yeah.
This is the shame-free zone, and one of the things that I encounter a lot with my clients is it's difficult to slow sex down because then the shame starts to
Yes,
come.
absolutely.
Self-consciousness, maybe some body image issues. Um, and I'm thinking about ways in which I help clients to become more present with their sexual
Hmm.
desires and aversions, because we
Hmm.
have all of those.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm thinking that probably one of the things we want to do when the shame comes up, or the feelings of self-consciousness,
Hmm.
or even that tightness in our chest where we're
Hmm.
having, shallow breathing, is to breathe. Do you think
Yes,
that's true?
yes, I think that's true. I think that's true. The
And there's
3-minute game, the wheel of consent is a practice.
Yeah.
It's a model, but it's mainly a practice. And it's a practice in the slowing down and taking, receiving, and giving apart. So it's either your turn or it's their turn.
Mm,
And noticing that those are different experiences.
yeah.
And why that's helpful is because when you take them apart, you have experiences that are possible no other way.
Yeah.
There are experiences that are available when it's just your turn
Hmm.
that are possible no other way.
Oh,
And there are experiences that are possible when it's just their turn that are possible no other way.
yeah.
And then you take what you learn in those taking it apart, and then you can apply it back to your life however you want. But it's best if you look at it as a practice, and it is a practice for two people, two or more people. So you know, you got to have someone to play it with. Um,
Yes.
but if you can take it as a practice, like, okay, we're going to go into this container of this practice for an hour, and we're going to play this thing and see what we find, and we're going to discover, and we're going to be curious, and we're going to set aside our expectations for sex or whatever. Then it's sort of the new door opens, like, oh, well, this is interesting, this thing happened, and wow, that's neat. And it just gives you permission to experiment in ways that you probably wouldn't otherwise.
And I really think that's a key point,
Mhm.
because the expectations, we have to let go of
Mhm.
our expectations. Expectations are a big saboteur
Mhm.
of life in general, certainly when
Yes.
it comes to sex.
Yeah.
And the irony is, some of my clients are afraid they're not going to get their needs met. Um, and it's almost, um, it becomes kind of difficult to help
Hmm.
them see that their expectation that they're not going to get their need met becomes a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah. I
because
agree.
expectation is not a fertile ground for pleasure.
Yes, that's right. That's
Can
right.
I was watching some of your videos where you're just walking through an apple orchard and you're
Oh,
touching moss on the tree trunk
yeah.
and you're picking the apples, and every step you took and every touch you initiated was so sensual and embodied, fully embodied. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about how one gets to this sensual embodied experience of touch.
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, first of all, you start small. You start with micro moments, and a few moments and a few seconds and a few minutes, because there's a reason that we tend to be not so embodied. And that's because all of our feelings live in our bodies. So if we don't want to feel our grief, we don't want to feel our shame, we don't want to feel our fear, that's easy. Just don't feel your body. And then you won't feel any of that. So if you don't want to have feelings, just don't have a body and the problem is solved. So there's a reason why it's hard to be embodied. And as we become more embodied, which I would define as being familiar with and attentive to the sensations of our body, being familiar with and attentive to the way we express ourselves with our body, being familiar with and attentive to our impulse to play and do with our body,
Right.
and express our emotions with our body. As we become more embodied, we become more aware of our feelings. And so, you've known this, I imagine, and many people do on an embodiment journey. Feelings come up. So we need some way to learn how to be with ourselves and be with each other without thinking there's anything to fix. And that means having compassion for the tears that come up, being able to hold the rage that comes up without taking it out on somebody else. So I think the real journey of embodiment, which can be supported by someone who's helping you notice your sensations and so forth, is really about feelings.
Well, and I loved something that is posted at the very bottom of your website. I'm going to read it right now, if that's okay with you,
Sure.
because hopefully I can find it here. Okay, never mind with the reading. Let's just talk about it because I'm not able to find it real quick. It's the whole idea that this idea of consent around touch is a bigger issue. Obviously, one that's highlighted by the Me Too movement. And we're seeing this still come out where interns and aides and employees are saying, I didn't like the way this person touched me. So I'll let you say whatever you want to say about that. And then I do have a bigger question about violence and how non-consensual touch actually leads towards a violent planet and a violent relationship with the planet even.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, shit happens. There's no question about it. And I think when consent is defined as, no, you're not allowed to do that without my consent. I didn't agree to it. That's great. And that's really important.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other side of consent, which is, what do we want to do that sounds fun to both of us? And let's make an agreement on where we're not going to go so that we can really dive into where we are going to go. Hell yeah. And that's where consent becomes crucial for having more fun. Because now, if I know where we're not going to go, now I can totally relax and jump into where we are going to go. And now I can have fun because I'm not worried about, are they going to try this? Or, are they going to try this? And if they do, then it's like, no, let's just say we're not going to do that. And then we have this whole other field to play in, and we can relax and enjoy ourselves.
And this is the difference between boundaries and walls. We put up walls to try to protect ourselves, but there's a way in which they're calcified, they're rigid, nothing can get through, and we're on edge. But if I have a boundary and I've learned how to communicate that successfully, then I've created safety for both of us. My partner doesn't need to worry that they're going to run afoul, something.
Right.
You know what the boundary is. And then I don't have to worry that they're going to violate.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I can relax and have fun.
Yeah. Which are prerequisites for pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just touched upon the idea that non-consensual touch leads to a more violent relationship with the planet. Did you want to say something about that?
Oh, well, it seemed pretty self-evident to me. So I don't know what else to say.
Well, it may not be as self-evident for other people that haven't been working with this for as long as you have.
Yeah.
That's kind of
I think, well, there's dynamics that play out in the larger world. Of course, we bomb somebody because we want their oil fields, or we want their cheap labor, and we do all kinds of terrible things as a country and as a culture.
Yes.
And there's a certain way that being with this person right in front of you and learning these things with your body through touch lands so that we really get it. Oh, this is what it feels like to be touched exactly the way I want. Oh my God, I didn't have any idea this was even possible, which is very common for straight women. I
Yeah.
had no idea it was even possible to be touched exactly the way I want. And, it's a revelation. Or, oh, this is what it feels like to set a boundary and have it respected. Oh my gosh, I never knew, or, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to do something that I want to do to you, and you give me permission. Oh my gosh, what a present, what a gift that is, that you would give me your body to play with in this way. Like, oh my gosh. And so we learn it with our bodies, and then it sinks in. And then we, at the same time, we learn, oh, you do have a limit to what you're willing to give me. You're willing to give me this, but not this. Oh, that's how I respect the limit. Now I understand. And then you start to look around your life and you see, oh, this is where I'm not actually asking for what I want. This is where I'm trying to manipulate somebody into getting it. Or, oh, this is where I stepped over that person's boundary and that wasn't fair to them. Or, oh, this is where I'm letting somebody step over my boundary without saying stop. And so we learn it in our bodies, and then we start to see it elsewhere in our lives. Yeah, I do notice that happening.
Yes, I think that learning more about consensual touch um, helps us become more sensitive to ourselves.
Yeah.
And as we become more empathetic and connected to ourselves, then that naturally goes out to other people. We'll become more connected and empathetic to them as well. And then as we're more connected and empathetic towards people, then we start to feel that way about other sentient beings and the planet's well-being. So there's just more of a sense of, I think all embodiment practices kind of take us to that place.
I think so. And
really what you're teaching around consensual touch is an embodiment practice.
Yeah. I think too, when we have our needs met, our need for connection, for touch, for example, for pleasure, when we have our needs met in a very tangible, physical way, we're not so starved, and so we don't have to go out and buy every damn thing that comes along because our needs have been met. We don't have to consume because we're hungry, because we've been fed. And when we're fed in these tangible, physical, real ways, then we're not so hungry.
Yes, because and this is one of the things that I also have noticed with some of the people that I work with as a relationship coach and sexologist, is it's like sometimes the sex that they are having is never fully satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And
I the 3-minute game.
Yeah. Well, and not just about how they're being touched, but the fact that they haven't learned how to be present to touch.
Yeah.
So they're not embodied when they go to touch each other.
Yeah.
They're not embodied when they're being touched.
Mm-hmm.
So even if their genitals respond with an orgasm, they can almost feel like it's 3 miles away.
Oh yeah. I've been there.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the other things I think we should talk about, since this is a shame-free zone, is the aversion to slowing down and really experiencing that pleasure.
Mhm.
Have you had any journey around that yourself as far as inviting pleasure? Was it ever fraught for you? Did you ever feel any shame come up? Because I know it's kind of a
Oh,
pure.
of course.
Well,
Of
see, you
course.
share.
Oh,
I know for me, I always was worried I was taking too long.
oh yeah, there's that too.
I'm sorry, I'm taking too long.
I'm supposed to be instant, like whatever.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think, I have a pretty good relationship to pleasure. I kind of always have, but I remember playing with mud pies when I was a kid, and just loved the feeling in my hands. I'm sorry it's so dark in here. The sun just went behind a
Oh,
cloud.
I can still see you fine.
Uh, so pleasure's always been accessible to me.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that when I really started sort of this pleasure and empowerment journey was in my mid 40s. And so, I was a grown woman, and I learned that I have a ceiling, like, oh, I can feel this much pleasure, but this much is a little scary and shame inducing and anxiety producing. And so if I come back down to this level, okay, I can handle that. And it gradually increased. And now I can handle and relax into a lot more pleasure than I could then. And I still have a ceiling, and I notice it because um, it becomes hard to relax. If I can
Yes.
relax into pleasure, that's good. And then it gets more pleasure, and then I'm starting getting tense. And so I think we all have a ceiling. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a pleasure ceiling. And so I think
I've had a similar
if we
journey to
recognize
yours.
that, then we can be okay with it. What
Me, I'm always trying to expand it,
yes,
but yes, we have to accept that it is what it is,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
I know for myself, it can feel like I'm going to lose my mind or lose control. And I don't, there's certain pleasure pathways where I don't
Mhm.
actually know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have predictable orgasmic pathways. I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly
You
where
know
that's
what
going,
works. Yeah, yeah,
right? No
yeah,
surprises.
yeah, right.
And I know I'm going to be satisfied.
Yeah.
But if I go down this other pleasure pathway, will it lead to an orgasm? Will I be satisfied or frustrated? Or will I just go crazy?
Yeah. Or will I just like disappear from the face of the earth? Like, yeah. Or will I like fall into a heap on the floor?
What? I just wish I understood what that was about. But so there is a theory. I don't know how you feel about this theory, but I'm sure you've heard of it, and that's the oxytocin set point. That those of us
Tell me
who had,
more.
huh?
Tell me more.
So depending on your birth process, that if your birth process was infused with pleasure, like you got to feel mom's warm belly, they didn't cut the umbilical cord right away, so you had all that beautiful blood coursing through you, and you're still connected to your mother even though you're outside the womb. Maybe even got to do the crawl from her vulva up to her breasts and lock onto a nipple. Apparently this is supposed to be nirvana, and so then you're
Yeah.
going to have a higher set point, and you'll be able to tolerate more pleasure. But if they just kind of ripped you out of there with some forceps and cut the umbilical cord real quick and whisked you off to stick a bunch of stuff in your eyes
Yeah.
and nose and wrap you up and not allow you that tactile experience, then you'd have a lower oxytocin set point.
Well, we are all in trouble.
I know, right?
Yeah. We are all in trouble. Most of us.
I literally did some therapy the other day. I remembered what it was like to be swaddled in a tight blanket.
Yeah.
And I was going, I hate that. So now every
Yeah.
time I see a movie where the baby's all wrapped up in a blanket, I go, stop torturing that baby.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Of course, everybody's different. Some people love
Yeah.
tight feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't heard that theory in particular, but my guess is that that may be a set point, but then you have, the next 2, 3, 5 years and more where you could um, you could counter that and have a wonderful sensual life, or you could have a wonderful birth and then have the next few years just be awful. So, I imagine it's a little more complicated than that, but yeah, it
I
definitely
appreciate
has
that.
to do
Yeah.
with our early childhood.
Yes, and I think also a culture that says work is good and pleasure is
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're not supposed to have pleasure. You're basically not supposed to have a body.
True.
Yeah, yeah,
So true.
yeah,
And particularly if you are cisgender female or
yeah,
maybe not even cisgender female, but if you've been inculcated with the feminine cultural
yeah,
dictates that tell you you should all be about helping other people have pleasure and
yeah.
your needs come last, if ever.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've been there.
There are
Not so
days
much
I'm still
anymore.
there. Not when it comes to sex. I'm pretty I have good boundaries around my sexual
Yeah.
journey. But when it comes to emotional labor, a lot of times I
Oh,
still
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still showing up doing the emotional labor and not getting my
yeah,
emotional needs met.
yeah. That's really easy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
want to tell us a little bit about your book? Because I don't know that I've characterized it accurately, and I'd love for the viewers to get some idea of what's waiting for them if they decide
Thank
to
you.
purchase it.
Thank you. It's called The Art of Receiving and Giving, the Wheel of Consent, and it is about actually that. You learn what it means to receive and how to receive, and 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 how to give, and what the difference is, and you come to learn to love both of them equally, because most of us are more comfortable trying to give or thinking that we're giving, or at least avoiding the vulnerability of receiving a gift. And so it's about this practice, which I briefly described, where you take apart receiving and giving. So you're doing one at a time. And it goes through these 3 lessons in how to establish this practice. And then it describes the quadrants and what they each feel like and how they're used and so forth. But it's mainly a how-to. It's a how-to, and it's accessible to anyone. It's not. I work mostly these days with other practitioners and providers, but this one's for the general public.
Yeah, and I mean, the book is for anybody of
Yeah.
any sexual orientation,
Oh, yeah,
gender,
absolutely.
identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Gender, orientation, it's all. This is one thing that we all have in common.
A lot of people are sheltered in place still, because I know,
Yeah.
you know, um, they're depending on where they live, their area may be opened up, it may not be opened up.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to know, is there a way that somebody who is stuck at home with nothing more than Netflix could use their own self-pleasure, use your book in their own
Yes.
self-pleasuring practice?
Absolutely. The first practice in the book it's called Waking Up Your Hands, and it's about feeling an object and how to wake up the sensation in your hands so that they become very sensitive. And that's a lifelong practice. And you don't need anyone else around to do that. In fact, it's probably easier with no one else around. Um, and um, and I have played with, actually, you can give yourself a little shoulder rub, of course, yeah, whatever. That's easy to do. Or you can say, how would you like your how would you like your shoulders rubbed? And you can listen to your shoulder say, I want to squeeze right here. And then you can say, okay, I'll do that for you. And then when you squeeze your shoulder, it just has kind of a different quality to it, which is all in your head. It's all in your head. Your hand's doing the same thing.
Right.
But I've played with it as a way to experiment with, oh, can I receive and give if it's just me? So, you can play with that. It may do nothing for you, or it may be interesting. I don't know.
Well, so let's get a little personal here. My partner touches me way better than I touch myself.
Mm.
And some of the things that I have noticed is that I'm in a hurry
Hmm.
or I have expectations.
Oh.
And I'm wondering if you have some tips for someone who has a relationship with themselves, like they are kind of agenda driven.
Mm-hmm.
So how would somebody?
Asking for a friend, are you?
No, this is for me.
I know.
Oh,
That's what I mean.
this is definitely for me. I've noticed the way that my partner touches me. It's intuitive, it's loving, it's patient, and still find
That's a
myself
great
being.
question. I fall guilty to the same thing if I'm self-pleasuring, that it's easy to, okay, I know the spot that's gonna work, and let's just go there, and I have experimented with slowing down. So it takes a real conscious effort to get off of that track. One thing that I've experimented with is, instead of touching for the pleasure of the part being touched, to touch for the pleasure of the hand that's doing the touching. So essentially feeling myself up.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a little light bulb went off there.
yeah.
Yeah,
It helps to break the track. Uh-huh.
right.
And then you
Sure.
can kind of go back and forth between paying attention to the hand and paying attention to whatever you're touching with the hand. It's kind of interesting to go back and forth.
Fascinating. No, I was just thinking about how, yeah, if the part that's being touched um, is just surrendered and not
Mhm.
wanting a particular thing in a particular
Right,
time in a particular
right,
way,
right.
then there would be more surrender.
Yeah.
And so I think, and let me know if you agree, but I think surrender is so important, even when we're self-pleasuring,
Mhm,
because pleasure is asking us to let go.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, thank you.
I wonder, sure, you're welcome. I wonder if it could also be that we don't, uh, that thing of, you never touch me unless you want sex.
Yeah.
Like, are we doing that to ourselves?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I never really sink into touching and feeling myself unless I'm gonna jerk off. So what's
So,
that about?
so of course then,
So then, of course, then I'm on the track instead of
yeah,
just exploring. Yeah.
and so that I often joke that my yoni likes my partner better than she likes me, and I think I'm starting to understand why.
Yes.
I thought, oh, it's just the way I'm touching her. She doesn't
Yeah.
like it. And
Yeah.
no, it is definitely, I'm coming at her with
Yes.
an agenda.
Yes. And the
Yeah.
other thing I think we do, speaking of genitals, is
Oh,
that
by the way,
we
I'm getting a total hot flash from what the truth you're talking here. I'm just like on fire. I'm like, oh my God, this is so true.
okay, let's go try it. That I think
Well,
we
you better believe I'm going to. I'm gonna have a date night with myself where I am not
beautiful,
expecting sex.
beautiful. Oh, other thing I think we do is we treat our genitals as if they have a job to do,
Yeah.
and their job is to get us off. And so we're gonna work those babies, And
Like what you
what
said.
if instead, we turned it around and said, okay, what do you want, honey?
Yeah.
And like serve them instead of putting them to work. I've played with that and it makes a world of difference. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I am so ready for making this change up myself. Just
Okay, I want to hear how it goes.
totally. Well, it's interesting because on some level, I think I was starting to intuit this.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I was just getting ready to interview you. I don't know. But the last time I touched myself, I was asking myself, like, I was asking the parts that were getting touched, what
Yeah.
do you want? How do you feel? Turned out they just wanted a cuddle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They just wanted to cuddle and to go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like, they have a job to do and they're always ready for the job to do. And like,
Yeah.
oh, geez.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally. Oh my God. I've
Yeah.
been such a bad date. Well,
Yeah.
okay. I thank you so much for dropping all this wisdom, and I want to know where people can learn more about you, especially professionals. You're saying you work mostly with professionals.
Mhm.
Maybe tell us what kind of professionals you work with and how they can find you. And then, of course, most importantly, how anybody of any gender or sexual orientation can get a copy of your book.
Great. So, wheelofconsentbook.com, and you can put this in the thing, in the
Oh, it's
notes. Yeah.
we're going to put all the links.
Wheelofconsentbook.com is where you can find out about the book and buy the book, and you can get a signed copy if you donate to our scholarship fund.
Oh, I'm
And
gonna get one of
you can,
that.
yes, absolutely. And bettymartin.org is where I talk about my work. And schoolofconsent.org is where most of the work actually happens. And
And what
myself
is
and a
School of
few other
Consent?
people.
What is the
School of Consent is a training organization, and we train people in using the Wheel of Consent in their client sessions and in teaching workshops. So we work with, originally I was teaching sex workers and sexological body workers and massage therapists and stuff.
Right.
And over the years, it's just grown. People have become more and more interested in it. And now we have coaches and therapists and teachers and yoga teachers. And we still have sex workers, thank God.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot, if you're in the helping profession in any way, or teaching or leading profession in any way, then the Wheel of Consent can really help what you're doing with your clients.
Wow.
And of course, it used to be in person, and this year it's online, but I expect we'll get back to in person at some point.
Hopefully we get back to some touch.
Yeah.
Humans need touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Betty, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. I'm so proud of you too.
Thank you.
I love seeing what you're up to, and I've so enjoyed your book back when it came out, and it's really great. Yeah. Yeah.
I also just want to express my gratitude towards you because your work has helped my work.
Oh, thank you.
My clients, and now apparently it's going to also help my masturbation practice.
Well, I'm honored.
I could just think about you all the time. I sometimes like to close my interviews with this question. Is there anything that you wish I'd asked you that I didn't? Or just something you want to add?
I'm not sure if it's asking, but there is something that I also want to say. Going back to talking about, especially women being enduring and going along with touch that they don't like.
Yeah.
And that is that when you can set up a situation so that you do get the touch that you like, which usually means having some kind of conversation that we're going to experiment here. Can we spend a half an hour just experimenting with me?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to tell your partner they're doing it wrong. And, I'm sure you've covered all the ways not to do that. But noticing that there's a difference between what you want and what you're okay with is huge. It's life-changing. And when you can have an experience where you are asking and getting it just the way you want it, your life changes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is so worth doing.
Yes, because I really think what you're pointing to is sexual empowerment, which is, or erotic empowerment maybe is a better word.
Yeah.
When we're erotically engaged and empowered, our creative and spiritual aspects also get freed up and become
Absolutely.
more of the person that we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, darling, I'm going to say goodbye for now. And I look forward to hopefully being in a place where you and I can hug again.
Yes.
I missed you.
Thank you. I miss you too. Thanks for having me.
And as soon as I log off here, I'm going to not only post the link to get a copy of your book, but I'm going to get a autographed copy myself.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see you.